And so we have a guest, Felicia, with us. She is joining us from, would you like to tell us where you're joining us from, Felicia?
Detroit, Michigan.
Well, awesome. Hopefully the weather isn't too bad up there in Michigan for you. It's probably a little bit chillier than where I am in Atlanta. But yeah, I'm so glad you could join me today. It'd be really nice to know a little bit more about you and your path of recovery. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your stroke, and then we can get into some of those questions that you may have.
Okay. I had my stroke 2009 on Halloween. So my stroke is going on 12 years old when this October. My legs, I'm walking, but my right arm is still paralysis. I can't move it. I do exercise it on a daily basis for it won't get stuck. But I want to start moving, get some movement in my arm and hand. I want to know, will that device, although I had my stroke almost 12 years ago, will it help me?
This is a really important question. And I think it's been a common theme throughout many of our Rehab Power Hours. And I think it's a common question that stroke survivors, or as Maddie will say later, stroke thrivers, will say that, yeah, the idea of this chronicity, and just because you're X number of years post-stroke doesn't mean you can't still improve. This is something that is maybe inappropriately told to patients, that after 6 months, what you have there then is what you're going to get. And that is just really not an accurate representation of the data and what the literature says. And so I'm drawing all of my inferences from not only my experience as a provider, but also from the scientific literature. And that scientific literature is replete with information that says that just because you're past 6 months doesn't mean you can't improve. And in fact, the Hand Mentor has been almost exclusively focused on helping individuals who have chronic impairment. And actually, so those are some of the original studies that I was working on back in the day, where we were exclusively focused on individuals who had those significant impairments long term. And so I think some of those average ages, or I guess average time since their strokes, were in the 5 to 10 year mark. And so we find that those people are still able to make meaningful improvements in their upper extremity function. So the one thing I do want to mention, though, is that it's going to be really hard for me to kind of crystal ball this and say, yeah, you can expect to see this amount of improvement. It's just going to be really hard. And anyone that tells you that they can predict that, probably not telling you the truth. It's just there's so many factors that are involved in the recovery process that it really makes it hard to pinpoint what kind of improvement you can expect. But what we can do is we can control the things that have a meaningful impact on that trajectory, right? It's kind of like a path forward, right? We can do things to increase that slope to make you recover quicker. And two of those most important things are the amount of rehab that you do and whether or not you're actively engaged in that rehab. And these are two of the fundamental aspects that the Hand Mentor really tries to address, right? It makes it really fun to engage in the rehab. And simultaneously, you get a kind of really happy byproduct of that is you're able to do more rehab. So hopefully that's maybe a long-winded answer to your question. I think that, yes, you can expect to see some improvements with the Hand Mentor, provided you're able to engage in it and get that high dose.
Okay.
After the studies were completed, we actually saw people had improvements in their elbow and their shoulder control, which is really surprising, right? Because we just focused on the wrist and the hand. But we see people, when we ask them to do these functional tasks, like pick up a cup, like or a can of soda, or fold a towel, we see that they have better purposeful movement about their shoulder and their elbow, which allows them to then engage in those activities. So this is really intriguing. And to be honest, we still don't know why this is happening specifically, but we do see those improvements occurring. So it is likely to help improvements about the whole upper extremity of your whole arm, not just about the wrist and the hand.
Okay.
And so with respect to how you're going to kind of get to that hour, it really depends on where you're coming from and your kind of past experience with rehab. You could start off day one hitting out of the park and doing multiple hours a day. I always kind of, I'm hesitant with that unless someone's really has a strong history with rehab, simply because if you start off and you're really gung-ho and you do 3 hours a day for that first day or two, you might get fatigued, and that might disincentivize you for the next week or so. And we really want to avoid that. And so I would personally recommend, and this is generally a good practice in rehab or sort of any sort of exercise program fundamentally, is to build up rationally and slowly up to that point where we're getting some good benefits. And we think that's going to happen at that hour long.